Final ending to Finding Myself, Part 1 down below. 6 weeks later, the news of my pregnancy arrived. I was certain that day in the garage was when our daughter Wendy was conceived. Post-pregnancy, my fascination with rediscovering that raw moment with Dave persisted. I tried recreating it in the garage to no avail. It was never quite the same. I even wondered if his car, the setting for our encounter, held the magic. An attempt under the moonlight, however, ended in worry over his car's paint rather than fulfilling the passion we sought. Eventually, I accepted it as a unique, irreplicable moment, until a similar spark reignited. With Wendy now 2, Dave, ever the doting father, decided to revamp our yard with a grand play area. The project involved laying down large, non-allergenic foam blocks, carefully chosen for safety and impossibility of being a choking hazard, beneath the play structure. This meticulous planning for our daughter's joy brought back a glimpse of that extraordinary connection we shared. It was a strenuous day, filled with hard work under the sun, and I found myself often in the garden, knees planted firmly in the soil. Initially clad in a sweatshirt and old jeans, the heat soon became too much. Opting for a t-shirt and shorts brought a noticeable shift. Dave, who had been somewhat contentious earlier, couldn't seem to keep his eyes off me. It felt like our morning disagreements were forgotten, and he was suddenly more agreeable. I couldn't help but catch my husband glancing over at me multiple times. It was a good thing we had decided to let my parents take Wendy for the day, allowing us to focus on our project. We had rented some equipment from Home Depot to tackle the tougher parts of the job, and with the heavy lifting out of the way, it was time to lay down the liner and set up the play area. While Dave returned the equipment, I prepared lunch and decided to freshen up. I thought a change into clean, appealing attire would capture his attention during lunch, but he hardly looked my way, leaving me feeling a bit unnoticed. After lunch, as we resumed our outdoor tasks, I mentioned how warm I felt and decided to change again, opting for another old t-shirt and shorts that were comfortable but not snug. This time, Dave took notice. As we worked closely together, adjusting boards and anchors, our proximity grew, and we found ourselves working side by side, even bumping into each other occasionally. In an effort to cool down further, I discreetly removed my bra in the garage, though I was convinced it wasn't just about physical attraction. Dave's attention seemed sparked more by the simplicity and authenticity of the moment rather than anything else. And there, amidst the dirt and sweat, in the most ordinary of settings, we found a moment of intense connection. It was raw, passionate, and completely uninhibited, a stark contrast to the meticulous work we had been doing on our yard. The intensity of the moment was undeniable, and our connection felt deeper than ever before. It was a spontaneous expression of our bond, away from the complexities of daily life. As we caught our breaths, the sudden inquiry from our neighbor over the fence brought us back to reality. Dave's quick thinking provided a harmless explanation for our disheveled appearance, and I couldn't help but smile at the absurdity and beauty of the moment. The day's work ended not just with a physical accomplishment in our yard, but with an unexpected reaffirmation of our connection, reminding us of the unpredictability and passion that can be found in the most ordinary of moments. That experience surpassed the first, leaving me convinced of my pregnancy. A home test, 6 weeks later, confirmed my suspicions. This afternoon, I felt compelled to wear the outfit that seemed to work like magic, hoping to reignite our spark and perhaps welcome another child. Deep down, I believed another child might smooth over any lingering resentment. Yet, the true motive was a longing for the intense connection we once shared, something the recent stormy events couldn't match. Donning my special outfit, I attempted to draw him closer, hinting at my readiness without words. I anticipated a passionate response but was met with a look of unease instead. As he stepped outside, I decided it was time to involve my parents, the real big guns in this scenario. Soon after, I received a call informing me of an honor being awarded to Steve for his heroic actions during the storm, an event they wanted us to attend. The caller mentioned my husband's enthusiasm about presenting Steve with a reward, clueless of the secret tensions between Steve and me. Then, Steve called, mentioning the award and suggesting we celebrate afterward. I declined, maintaining a polite but distant demeanor. It was crucial to keep things amicable without revealing our past to Dave. I ended the call swiftly, leaving things unresolved. After cleaning his car, Dave and I decided to make the best of the sunny day by grilling some steaks and watching the kids chase each other around the yard until exhaustion claimed their boundless energy. Despite my doubts, I noticed Dave's glances linger on me more than once. It was a subtle confirmation that the spark wasn't lost between us, although a shadow of irritation seemed to cloud his demeanor. Maybe Paula had a point. He might have stumbled upon a chapter of my history I wasn't proud of, leading to his current unrest. The following day, he took the children to visit their friends, the twins, for reasons unknown to me. His absence gave me a quiet relief, sparing me from confronting any suspicions about my past interactions. My parents arrived while he was away, and a twinge of guilt washed over me for burdening them with my marital discord. My mother greeted me with warmth, immediately inquiring about the kids, while my father's concern quickly turned to Dave. It didn't take long for them to sense the tension that had settled over our household. Dave returned sooner than expected, and the kids, momentarily distracted by their grandparents, resumed their energetic display until it was time for a nap. I had hoped for a peaceful discussion with my parents mediating, but instead, my father confronted Dave aggressively about the nature of our relationship. "What's been happening with you two?" he demanded. Dave's reply of nothing did little to ease the tension. My father's interrogation escalated, touching on our intimacy issues and accusing Dave of neglect or worse, infidelity. Dave's attempt to dismiss his concerns with age-related excuses only fueled my father's anger, leading to a heated exchange I hadn't anticipated. My father's protective instinct had him on his feet, pointing and accusing, leaving my mother and me in shock at the escalation. Dave suddenly stood up and distanced himself from my dad with a calm demeanor. "Mark, I think it's best if you leave," Dave said with composure. "I'm sorry, but I won't tolerate being threatened in my own home. I'm puzzled as to why our personal matters concern you, but since Lisa reached out to you, perhaps you're not entirely to blame." "I'm staying right here," my dad retorted loudly. Then, my mom intervened. "Mark, listen to him," she urged. "We should head back." "No way," my dad protested. "I've seen enough dramas to guess what happens next." We leave, and then he lashes out at her for confiding in us about his harsh behavior. "Mark, they've been together for a decade and not once has he been violent towards her. The only one raising their voice here is you. This uproar is on you. Lisa, has Dave ever hurt you?" she questioned. "Never, Mom," I admitted, realizing the gravity of my error. "Do you suspect him of being unfaithful?" she probed. I was taken aback. "No, Mom," I replied. "I genuinely believe he's been faithful. My concern stems from us feeling somewhat distant lately." She turned back to my dad, her frustration evident. "See, Mark, you've jumped to conclusions and jeopardized our bond with the father of my grandchildren. For 10 years, he's been like a son to us, and you've wrongfully accused him. Let's leave." My dad faced Dave, his expression one of genuine regret. "I'm sorry, son," he said. "I feared something was terribly wrong the moment Lisa contacted us. I had this uneasy feeling." "You're not entirely mistaken," Dave admitted. "This isn't how I wanted things to unfold. I hoped Lisa and I could discuss this calmly. She was going to receive the documents on Monday anyway. Perhaps it's for the best." "What have you done, then?" my dad asked, visibly agitated. Dave simply shook his head, and a wave of nausea hit me. My mom was by his side in an instant. I noticed Dave's tears then, even my dad seemed moved. "Dave, if there's something you've done, just share it," he said. Dave shook his head again. "Whatever it is, we all know how much you care for her. I'm sure we can work through this. There's no moving forward from this," Dave responded. "Wait, what documents are you talking about?" "On Monday," I yelled, my voice filled with disbelief. My legs gave out, and I crumpled to the floor. Dave, looking equally shaken, pulled out a phone I hadn't seen before. He managed to get back on his feet and motioned for us to follow him to our home office. Once there, he connected the unfamiliar phone to our computer and transferred a file. Standing up, he simply said, "Just click on that file to see it. I can't stay here for this. It makes me sick every time." He left the room then, presumably to check on the kids. Curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked on the file, wondering what could possibly upset him so much. My parents were beside me, visibly worried, pondering what Dave could have discovered that would make him think our marriage might be over. The moment the video played, my world shattered. Somehow, Dave had gotten his hands on footage from a night I thought was buried in the past. "No, turn it off," I cried out, tears streaming down my face, dreading what they were about to witness. The realization that Dave had seen this, that the man who adored me more than anything had these images seared into his memory, was unbearable. It explained everything, his distance, his reluctance. I couldn't fathom how he'd been able to look at me, let alone speak to me. "My God, turn it off," my dad yelled in panic, struggling with the computer mouse in his attempt to close the video, but it continued to play. "Lisa, were you involved with those people?" he blurted out, his voice laden with disbelief and not waiting for my response. "This has to be some mistake, some sort of manipulation, right? It's all digital effects." Silence took over the room, broken only by my uncontrollable sobbing and the ongoing video. My father looked at me with a mixture of anger and disappointment, a stark contrast to his usual supportive demeanor. He couldn't even bring himself to look me in the eyes. Outside, the sound of Dave's car starting up broke the heavy silence. He revved the engine, a sound that echoed throughout the neighborhood. "Are you not going to say anything to him?" my dad asked, his tone harsh. "You've put us in an incredibly difficult position. Why did you even bring us into this?" "I didn't know he knew," I stammered, trying to compose myself. "Things just started to fall apart, and I love him too much to just let go without trying." "Did you catch the sorrow he couldn't quite mask?" my mother asked, her voice devoid of warmth. "It seems he really cared for you." "What do you mean cared?" I pressed. "My daughter, the eye doctor," my father chimed in, puzzling me with his remark. "Being around you sharpens my vision," he continued. "And what stands out most now is you. You dropped out of college despite the fortune I spent. You ended up waiting tables, barely making enough to cover your modest living space. Then along came a man who was everything we could have hoped for in a son-in-law, far surpassing your sister's disappointing spouse. You've jeopardized my bond with him, risking my chances of seeing my grandkids again." He paused as the sound of the car engine filled the air again. "He's definitely on his way out," Dad said. "Go after him." "He's not leaving," my mother interjected softly. "Do you think he'd actually take her back?" My father questioned in disbelief. "If I were in her shoes, would you?" she countered. "She was barely acquainted with those men," he replied. "A couple of them seemed destitute. How could she be certain of their health?" Then, turning to her, he added solemnly, "You wouldn't ever find yourself in such a situation, right?" It dawned on me then, my choices were causing even my parents to question their trust. "Absolutely not," she assured. "You know I care too much to ever consider such actions. I understand the pain it would cause. Why are you so convinced he won't leave?" my father inquired. "The children," Mom explained. She mentioned Dave always has them by his side, except when at work. They seem to be all he holds dear. Despite his anger towards her, he wouldn't abandon those kids. I noticed my mother had twice referred to me without saying my name. There I was, curled up on the floor, rocked by the realization that my life had unraveled over something so trivial. An update. I couldn't believe Dave was actually okay with this. The excitement bubbled up inside me at his proposal, not fully grasping the implications. When I mentioned it to Paula, she responded with a quip about having Dave give her a call, which I initially took as a jest. It turned out she wasn't joking at all. She had actually reached out to him, and so had a few of my other single friends. It amazed me how these same friends, who had always praised the single lifestyle, were now keen on connecting with my husband. Paula even went as far as to call me naive for accepting Dave's suggestion. "You missed your chance to score some points with him and reclaim your life," she chided. "Don't you realize he was testing you to see if you were truly over this phase?" "I think he understands me better than you think," I countered. "He believes that allowing me some space will ultimately strengthen our bond." My parents echoed Paula's sentiments. Following my first outing, they approached me, advising that I should consider moving out. They couldn't outright dictate my actions, given I was an adult, but they made it clear such behavior wouldn't be tolerated under their roof. To them, my actions amounted to betrayal, even with Dave's consent. After Dave and I initially separated, he supported me financially, but I quickly went through the funds. I even covered the costs for my initial date since the person I was seeing was unemployed. After our second date, I became intimate with him. He was younger and more energetic than Dave, but that vigor didn't translate into fulfillment. His lack of finesse made it a disappointing experience, possibly the least satisfying I've ever had. Paula opened her home to me, which I took as an olive branch to mend our strained relationship. When I confided in her about my disappointing encounter, she preferred not to discuss it. I found myself pondering how to extricate myself from this situation since I had already caught the interest of someone else, but a tactful exit strategy eluded me. Fortunately, the situation resolved itself without my intervention. Dave continued to allow me access to our children. During one visit, Dave left shortly after my arrival. I had looked forward to spending time with him and the kids, but it didn't pan out as hoped. The disappointment stung deeply. Part of me thought Dave wanted to spare me any additional stress or confusion. Yet, there was a nagging feeling of unease. My time with the children wasn't as fulfilling as I had anticipated. They were engrossed in their games and TV, barely engaging with me. When I attempted to prepare lunch, my daughter bluntly told me I hadn't made the sandwiches to their liking. That rejection from my own children, at ages 7 and 5, signified they were beginning to adapt to our new reality without me. When I returned to Paula's apartment, I was already feeling down, but the sight that greeted me pushed me further into dismay, even though, in a twisted way, it was the confirmation of my suspicions. Entering the apartment, I was confronted with Paula and the guy I had been seeing together in a way that left little to the imagination. The confrontation that followed was inevitable. Bobby, the guy, bluntly told me that his interest in me was superficial, driven by fleeting desires and the novelty of our outings. Ultimately, he confessed that he felt we shared no meaningful connection and that, in his view, I was too mature for his liking. He believed he found a better match in Paula. In a futile attempt at defense, I pointed out that Paula was actually older than me and not as physically endowed. Bobby countered, commenting unfavorably on my appearance while praising Paula's abilities in a way that stung deeply. The fallout was immediate. Paula and I didn't speak for days. Time passed, and I ventured into new relationships, but something was always amiss. The first quickly moved from dinner to an intimate encounter that felt lacking. His suggestion of a more adventurous encounter on our next outing left me cold. Another younger man entered my life, his student status raising my eyebrows, yet I chose not to dwell on it. Financial constraints led me to borrow from Paula for our dates. This relationship escalated physically, becoming a constant in our routine, yet it was marred by his domineering attitude and demands. Our biggest clash erupted over my request for more reciprocal intimacy, which ended in a heated argument overheard by Paula upon her return. She attempted to mediate, questioning why my desires were deemed unreasonable when I had been accommodating to his. His response revealed a disheartening view of me, informed by gossip and a transactional approach to our relationship. Paula's intervention brought an end to his presence, but the emotional toll was significant. In the aftermath, Paula offered consolation, reminding me of a husband whose love was unwavering, suggesting that my adventures had strayed far from their intended course. Her words prompted reflection on my actions and their impact. Yet, even in this moment of vulnerability, Paula's attempt to shift the conversation to lighter topics felt jarringly out of place. "We didn't go to a party," I said. "He just came over and we spent the evening together, the same way we used to." Paula gave me a look that I couldn't quite decipher. "That's all it ever was with him," I continued. "In a way, it's better this time. I didn't need to ask you for money to entertain him. I'm starting to think I made a mistake leaving my husband. I haven't felt truly connected since." "Paula, why are you looking at me like that? You chose him over the party," she asked, disbelief in her voice. "What party?" I was confused. "Your daughter's 8th birthday is today," she said sharply. Shaking her head, she retreated to her room, the door closing with a definitive thud behind her. That evening, my parents also expressed their disappointment for missing the celebration. They reminded me of my missteps, a conversation we'd had countless times before. In that moment, I was grateful for Dave, for he had offered me a chance to discover what I truly wanted. When I called Dave, just hearing his voice brought me a sense of comfort. I sensed a shared sorrow in his tone, though he might not have realized it. I wanted to ask if I could return, but every time I broached the subject of us, he deftly changed the topic. I asked to wish Wendy a happy birthday, but Dave mentioned she was already asleep. He shared how she described her birthday as the best ever, likely to spare my feelings, but it only deepened my regret. It was a stark reminder that my children had adapted without me, thriving under Dave's dedicated parenting. As the separation wore on, nearing its 4th month, I was ready to let go of the pretense. My choices had led me to this point, and I was facing the consequences. Then, Bill entered my life, offering a glimmer of hope. He reminded me of Dave in many ways, with his maturity and respectful demeanor. Our time together was different. He was generous, covering expenses and supporting me when I needed it. However, over time, I noticed a shift in our dynamics. Bill seemed more interested in exploring boundaries than in traditional intimacy, introducing elements I wasn't familiar with. While he ensured I was taken care of, I found myself missing the deeper connection I once had with my partner. Despite the new experiences, my heart longed for the familiarity and comfort of my marriage. When I opened up to Paula about my troubles, she urged me to return home and set my life straight before it was too late. I promised to reach out to Dave, but my world was already crumbling. The following day, as I was about to surprise Dave and the kids, I encountered an unexpected situation right outside my apartment. A tall woman was standing there, seemingly lost. She approached me with a friendly tone, asking, "Are you Lisa Thomas?" I confirmed, unaware of what was about to unfold. In an instant, I was taken aback by a sudden assault. The woman, much stronger than I anticipated, struck me down. I barely had time to process what was happening as I was overwhelmed by her blows, until a neighbor intervened and subdued her until security arrived. The reason behind the attack was a shock to me. She was Bill's wife, who had discovered his infidelity and a resulting health concern after a medical checkup. Confronting Bill had led her to learn about us, and Bill had tarnished my reputation in the worst way imaginable to defend himself. Distraught, I went for a health checkup and began necessary treatments, realizing the gravity of bringing any health issues back to Dave. During the weeks of my recovery, I yearned for the simplicity and love of my previous life. I missed Dave's affection, the intimacy we shared, and the joy of our daily routines. The thought of reuniting with him was the only light in this dark time. But then, another blow came. My sister, who I already had a strained relationship with, relayed a humiliating encounter. A man had approached her with derogatory assumptions about her, based on rumors about me that had spread through the town. This marked a new low in my life. Around that time, Paula subtly suggested it was time for me to either find a new place to live, a job, or both. It took me by surprise when she mentioned I was a bit too much for her taste. Even our usual lunch outings with the group felt off. After one such gathering, Paula informed me the group had decided to end our lunch meetings. It seemed like a gentle way for them to phase me out. And sure enough, the following week, they met without me at the same old spot. It didn't bother me, though. I had started to realize that envying their circle had only brought negativity into my life. Being left out of their lunches was no loss. In fact, I was on the cusp of making changes that would have led me to leave the group anyway. Dressed in my best, I convinced Paula to drop me off. I arrived a bit late to a dimly lit auditorium and scanned the room until I found them, just as the lights dimmed further. I couldn't see them clearly, but I had a rough idea of where they were sitting, planning to catch up with them during the intermission or after the show. As the play unfolded, I watched the performers deliver their lines. Then, she appeared on stage. My daughter looked so grown and different, her hairstyle anew. My heart swelled with pride as she delivered her lines with confidence. The audience erupted in applause at the end of her scene. The play was divided into 2 parts, with grades 2 and 3 performing each half, separated by a brief intermission. When the lights came back on, I navigated through the crowd towards backstage, anticipating a reunion with my family. The crowd was larger than expected, and among them I found my parents, with whom I had lost touch, my sister and her husband, and my dear husband Dave with our son Kyle. The twins, close friends of my daughter, were also there, which felt slightly odd. As I approached, I overheard a man asking my daughter about her preparation for the play. Her response struck me deeply. She credited her dad with helping her rehearse her lines. "And your mom helped you with your hair and the moves, right?" he inquired. "Well, I don't exactly call her mom," she replied, "but she's the closest thing to a mom I've got." Then it happened. A woman stepped away from Dave, and I recognized her. She was the mother of the twins and married to that jerk, Steve. She approached and my daughter embraced her. The hug was so effortless and familiar, it was clear they'd shared moments like this countless times. When she released Wendy, my 5-year-old son Kyle immediately reached for her hand, clinging to it as if it was the most precious thing in the world. Silent tears streamed down my face as I walked away, looking for a secluded spot to let my emotions out. I found a corner where I could survey the area for the nearest restroom. Navigating through the crowd, I overheard a conversation. "Yeah, that's her. Did you see her? Man, you should get to know her. She's got a vibe. You can tell she's genuine. I bet she'd be friendly if you approached her right." Then another voice chimed in, "Not for me, buddy. I heard she's been through a lot with someone I know. That lady has had her share of troubles." "That's easy to handle," replied the first voice I identified as Steve. "Besides, her husband caused me a lot of problems. I feel like she owes me a favor." Then Steve grabbed my arm, attempting to engage in conversation. "Hey, Lisa, it's been a while. You're feeling as down about everything as I am. Maybe we should get out of here, try to forget our troubles. My friend Rusty here is also looking to forget." "I'm not interested, leave me alone," I said firmly, loud enough for people nearby to hear. "I'm not deterred by rumors," he shouted back. "My wife is leaving me. She's taking everything, the kids, the house. And I'm broke until I find a job, thanks to your husband. So yeah, you owe me." Before he could continue, he was suddenly pulled back. Losing his balance, he fell, and in an instant, Dave was there, defending me with a determination that left Steve overwhelmed. Initially, Steve tried to retaliate, but soon he couldn't keep up. When Dave was finally pulled away, it was my father who intervened. They splashed water on Steve's face to revive him, and he came to, coughing and spitting out water. Even from a distance, I could see the aftermath on Dave's hands, swollen and bleeding. "Why are you attacking me over this?" Steve yelled, still trying to provoke further conflict. "Because she's still my wife, and you don't have the right to insult her in front of all those school kids and their parents," Dave retorted with equal fervor. Then Amanda made her way through the crowd, digging into her purse for some tissues to dab at Dave's scrapes. Steve's face was quickly puffing up, his eyes nearly shut from swelling. "What about me?" Steve bellowed, seeing Amanda's actions. "Aren't I the one you're married to? He got into a fight defending her, and you're tending to his wounds." As Amanda turned, I noticed my daughter's hair was styled just like hers. Amanda was undoubtedly attractive, not in the same way I was, but she had her own appealing features. And when she looked up at Dave to give him a kiss, my stomach churned, leading me to faint. The scene before me suggested she and my husband were more than mere acquaintances. It dawned on me then, the real risk of losing him. My comment, pretty clear the 6-month separation was a last-ditch effort and a test that Lisa failed miserably. Her asking to swing along with the passive-aggressive manipulation laid the groundwork to rot their marital foundation.